Ever been attacked by pigeons? Now imagine they're man-eating and made of bronze. That's what Hercules walked into, history's deadliest bird-watching trip. Apparently the gods looked at Hercules and thought, what if pigeons, but deadly? This one has Hercules, the muscle-bound monster buster, reduced to bird control. Yes, after rivers of manure, his cousin Eurystheus decided it was time for pest management. And not just any birds, no, these were metallic man-eating arrow-launching birds. Because of course they were. Enter a flock of man-eating birds with bronze feathers sharp enough to slice skin, because nothing says heroic labor like being dive-bombed by metallic chickens. So having survived lions, hydras, magical deer, and what was essentially the world's worst janitorial job, Hercules probably thought he'd earned a break. But Eurystheus wasn't in the business of giving breaks. He was in the business of inventing creative ways to make his cousin's life irritating, which is how Hercules found himself sent off to deal with a flock of birds. Now, when you hear flock of birds, you might imagine pigeons, or maybe some angry geese if you're unlucky. You'd be wrong. These were the Stymphalian Birds, creatures said to have been raised by Ares, the god of war, which already tells you they weren't your average sparrows. They lived near a swamp in Arcadia, in a forest so dense and marshy that humans avoided it. The birds were vicious, aggressive, and had feathers made of metal. Not delicate little quills, but bronze and iron, sharp enough to pierce flesh. Some versions even say they could launch those feathers like arrows, basically turning themselves into self-firing weapons. It's like if Mother Nature looked at regular ducks and thought, needs more murder. Of course, the locals were terrified. The birds would swoop down in swarms, scratching, stabbing, and devouring crops, cattle, and sometimes people. The swamp around Lake Stymphalian became a no-go zone, and this was where Eurystheus sent Hercules, because nothing says hero's journey like playing exterminator. Hercules made his way to Arcadia, probably less than thrilled. Imagine the mood. Oh, good. Last time it was poop. This time it's pigeons with knives attached. Wonderful. But upon arriving at the swamp, he ran into a problem. The marsh was so thick that he couldn't actually wade in. He couldn't find the nests. The birds hid deep inside, safe in their reedy sanctuary, impossible to reach. And Hercules was not about to dive headfirst into quicksand just for a chance at stabbing some geese. This is where Athena, the goddess of wisdom and general problem-solving, stepped in. Athena, who had a soft spot for Hercules, gifted him with a peculiar tool, a set of bronze clappers, forged by Hephaestus, the blacksmith god. Think of them like ancient Greek castanets or cymbals. The idea was simple. Hercules would stand at the edge of the swamp and start banging these clappers together, making a sound so loud and terrifying that the birds would be forced into the air, flying out of their swampy hideaway. So picture it. The mighty Hercules, slayer of beasts, standing on a muddy shoreline, rhythmically banging giant bronze noisemakers together like some kind of chaotic marching band percussionist. Not exactly the glamorous hero moment you'd carve into a temple wall, but it worked. The birds, startled by the echoing clang, rose up in a massive screeching swarm, wings flashing with metallic sheen. It must have been a terrifying sight. A storm cloud of bronze feathers darkening the sky, shrieking like rusty hinges. But it also gave Hercules his chance. He strung his bow, drew his arrows, and began shooting them down one by one. Now, Hercules was famous for his archery. He wasn't just strong, he was skilled. And as the birds filled the air, he calmly picked them off, feathers and bodies raining down into the swamp. Some he killed outright, others he only wounded, sending them scattering in panic. Eventually, the surviving birds decided that Greece was no longer worth it and fled across the sea, supposedly to the Black Sea region, where they would later cause trouble for the Argonauts. Which means Hercules didn't completely wipe them out, he just relocated the problem. Basically, the ancient Greek version of shooing your neighbor's cat out of your garden, except with a bow and arrows. When the swamp grew quiet again, Hercules lowered his bow, probably with a sigh of relief. Another labor done, or at least mostly done. Because as usual, there was bickering afterward about whether he'd technically completed it. Some versions claim Eurystheus grumbled that not all the birds had been killed, just scared away. But even he couldn't deny that Hercules had rid Arcadia of its terrifying bird problem, so the labor stuck. The Stymphalian birds are an odd entry in the 12 labors. They don't have the iconic weight of the Nemean lion or the hydra. They're not as absurdly memorable as the Arcadian stables. They sit somewhere in between. Dangerous, yes, but also faintly ridiculous. Birds with metal feathers, birds as weapons, birds that had to be chased off with musical instruments. It reads almost like a parody, and maybe that's part of the charm. What's interesting is how this labor shows Hercules relying on tools and wit, not just strength. He couldn't wrestle the birds, he couldn't storm into the swamp. Instead, he had to scare them, flush them out, and then use precision with a bow to take them down. It's less brute force, more strategy, a rare theme in Hercules' otherwise smash-heavy career. It also reflects something deeper about Greek myth, the idea that not every monster needs to be slain head-on. Sometimes you need noise, patience, and a bit of cleverness. Even heroes can't just bulldoze through everything, though Hercules probably would have preferred bulldozing. And there's a faint humor in how easily the whole thing could have gone sideways. Imagine if the clappers hadn't worked. Imagine Hercules standing there, banging away while the birds just blinked at him from the reeds, unimpressed. Or worse, imagine the birds swarming him all at once, stabbing him with 1,000 bronze feathers. Instead, the plan succeeded, and Hercules got to add bird control specialist to his growing resume of strange jobs. When he returned to Eurystheus, we can assume the king did his usual routine, pretending to be unimpressed, but secretly fuming that Hercules had once again succeeded. Another impossible task ticked off the list. Eurystheus probably muttered something about too many survived or you used divine help, but at the end of the day, the swamp was quiet and Hercules could move on. And what a bizarre journey so far. Lion skins, serpent heads, sacred deer, rivers of filth, and now birds made of bronze. The labors weren't just about strength. They were a parade of absurdity, each one stranger than the last, and we're only halfway through. Hercules, weary but stubborn, tightened his bow, tucked the bronze clappers away, and prepared for whatever new nonsense Eurystheus would throw at him. Spoiler, it involved cows again, because apparently Greece never ran out of problematic livestock. But that's for the next night. For now, picture the swamp at dusk. The reeds whispering in the wind, the metallic feathers glinting faintly in the mud, and Hercules trudging off muttering something like, "Birds. It had to be birds." Another labor down. Another irritation survived. And still, so many more to go.